The snow fell thick that December evening as Margaret sat on the cold sidewalk outside St. Mary's Hospital. Her shift had ended an hour ago, but she had nowhere to go. The boarding house had locked her out this morning when she couldn't pay the rent. 23 years old, and she had nothing but her nurse's uniform and a heart full of dreams that seemed foolish now. She pulled her knees closer, trying to stay warm. The city rushed past her, cars honking, people hurrying home to families and warm dinners. Nobody saw her. Nobody stopped. That's how the world works when you're invisible. She thought about her mother's words before she passed. Margaret, you have a gift for caring. Use it well. But what good was caring when you couldn't even care for yourself? She had come to New York with such hope, a nursing degree and determination. But the hospital pay barely covered food. The boarding house took most of it. And now, even that was gone. Thomas Whitmore stepped out of the black car with his daughter Emma's small hand in his. The child was 4 years old with eyes that held too much sadness for someone so young. Her red coat bright against the gray evening. Her teddy bear clutched tight. They had just left another interview. Another nanny who smiled at him but looked past Emma. The 7th one this month. His wife Caroline had died 2 years ago. Cancer took her slowly and then all at once. Since then, Emma hadn't spoken a word. Not to the doctors, not to the therapists, not to him. The specialists said it was trauma. Selective mutism, they called it. She needs stability, they said. She needs a mother figure. But how do you replace the irreplaceable? Thomas had built his software company from nothing. He could solve complex problems, negotiate million-dollar deals. But he couldn't reach his own daughter. He couldn't bring back her voice. Emma tugged his sleeve and pointed. There on the sidewalk sat a young woman, barefoot in the snow, her feet red from cold, her nurse's uniform thin against the winter wind. But she wasn't asking for money. She was singing softly, some old lullaby, and she was crying, not loud sobs, just quiet tears that spoke of loss and loneliness. Emma pulled harder, walked toward the woman. Thomas followed confused. His daughter never approached strangers. Emma stopped right in front of Margaret and did something that made Thomas's heart stop. She took off her red knitted hat, the one Caroline had made before she got too sick, the one Emma never let anyone touch, and she placed it on Margaret's head. Margaret looked up startled. Her eyes met Thomas's, and he saw something there. Not pride, not shame, just exhaustion and kindness. She smiled at Emma through her tears. Thank you, sweetheart. Her voice was gentle. You're very kind, but you should keep this. It's too precious. Emma shook her head and then did something more shocking. She took off her scarf, wrapped it around Margaret's neck. Then she looked at her father, really looked at him, with an expression he hadn't seen in 2 years. Hope. Thomas knelt down beside them, his expensive suit getting wet from the snow. Miss, are you all right? I'm fine, Margaret lied. Just resting. Where are your shoes? I left them. She paused. I had to leave quickly. Thomas understood. He had grown up poor. Before the company. Before the success. He remembered his mother sitting just like this once. Outside a church. Waiting for the soup kitchen to open. You're a nurse. He saw her badge. Yes. St. Mary's. Night shift usually. But She stopped. It didn't matter now. Emma was staring at Margaret, then at her father, then back at Margaret. She tugged Thomas's sleeve again and made a gesture, the one that meant home. Miss Margaret, is it? Thomas said slowly. This might sound strange, but I have a proposition. Margaret looked at him warily. She had heard propositions before, from men in expensive suits. None of them good. I'm not that kind of person, sir. I know. Thomas said quickly. I can see that. My daughter can see that. He took a breath. I need someone to care for Emma, not just a nanny. Someone who understands loss. Someone with a good heart. And Emma, she hasn't chosen anyone in 2 years, but she chose you just now. Margaret looked at the little girl, at those serious eyes, at the teddy bear, at the way she stood close to her father but separate, like an island I don't understand. Come home
This
with us
is a
tonight.
perfect
He
moment,
said,
isn't it?
we have guest rooms, warm food. Tomorrow, if you want, we can discuss a position. Living in, full salary, health insurance. Time to get back on your feet. And if it doesn't work, no obligations. But please, don't sleep out here in the snow. Margaret wanted to say no, wanted to keep her pride. But Emma reached out and took her hand, those small fingers cold but gentle. And Margaret felt something shift. Sometimes God sends angels in red coats. Her mother used to say, maybe this was hers. All right, she whispered, just for tonight. Emma smiled, didn't make a sound, but smiled. Thomas felt his throat tighten. That smile, it had been so long. They drove through the snowy streets. Emma sat between them, her hand still holding Margaret's. The city lights blurred past. The same city that had seemed so cold an hour ago now felt different, full of possibility. At the penthouse, Emma led Margaret to a guest room, showed her the bathroom, brought her soft towels. Thomas watched his daughter move with purpose, with life. Something had awakened in her. Over dinner, Margaret told them her story. Small pieces, growing up in Ohio, losing her mother, nursing school, the dreams of helping people. Thomas shared, too, about Caroline, about the company, about the loneliness of having everything except what mattered most. Emma listened to it all, and slowly, very slowly, she leaned against Margaret's arm. That night Thomas stood in Emma's doorway, watching something remarkable. Margaret sat on the bed, singing that same lullaby from the sidewalk, and Emma, his silent daughter, was humming along. Just humming, but it was sound, it was voice, it was hope. Margaret looked up and saw him, tears streaming down his face. She smiled, that same gentle smile, the one that said, I understand. I've been broken too. 2 months later, Margaret still lived with them. She cared for Emma, but it was more than that. She brought warmth back to the cold apartment. Laughter, music, life. Emma spoke her first word on a Tuesday morning. Mama. She said it looking at Margaret, then panicked, looked at her father, afraid she had betrayed her real mother's memory. But Thomas knelt down. It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy would be happy. She want you to love again, to talk again. She sent Margaret to us. I really believe that. 6 months later, Thomas found Margaret in the kitchen. Snow falling outside just like that first night. He had been thinking about this for weeks, fighting it, reasoning with himself. But the heart doesn't listen to reason. Margaret, yes, you came into our lives when we were frozen. Both of us. You thawed us out. You gave Emma her voice back. You gave me hope again. I know this isn't conventional. I know it's complicated. But I need to tell you, I'm falling in love with you. Margaret turned, her eyes bright. I fell in love with you both that first night. When you saw me, really saw me, not what I had lost, but what I had to give. They married quietly that spring. Emma was the flower girl, wearing her red coat, the one from that December night. At the reception, an old friend asked Thomas how he knew Margaret was the one. He smiled. She was barefoot in the snow, crying and singing at the same time. And my daughter, who hadn't smiled in 2 years, gave her the hat her mother made. Sometimes the greatest blessings come when you're at your lowest, when you have nothing left but kindness to give, and someone sees it, really sees it, years later. When Emma was grown and asked Margaret about that night, Margaret said, I was sitting in the snow thinking my life was over, but really it was just beginning. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you were meant to have all alone. That's the wisdom that comes with time, with loss, with love found in unexpected places, on cold sidewalks, in December snow, when angels come dressed in red coats, and broken people find each other and make something whole. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment telling us about a time when kindness changed your life, because these stories matter. Your stories matter. We're all just looking for home. And sometimes home finds us when we least expect it.